Have you ever felt completely overwhelmed by the sheer amount of things there are to learn in the
Oh,
world?
absolutely. All the time.
You know that feeling. You open up a browser tab to look up one simple thing, maybe a recipe or a quick tutorial.
Right.
And suddenly you are staring down this massive rabbit hole of endless information, entirely different disciplines, and 100 new skills you feel like you should be mastering.
It's paralyzing.
It really is entirely paralyzing. But what if the antidote to that overwhelm isn't to force yourself to learn less, but rather to change the fundamental way you document what you learn?
That is a completely different way to look at it.
Today, we're looking at a deeply personal, meticulously detailed blog post published today, actually,
Hmm.
Tuesday, March 10th, 2026.
Fresh off the press.
Exactly. It comes to us from a site called kianm.org.
It is a truly fascinating corner of the internet to explore. The author, who signs his posts simply as Ang, describes himself quite humbly as an old software plumber.
Which is such a great phrase.
It is. But when you read that, you might expect a dry, technical log of server maintenance.
Right, fixing digital pipes.
Exactly. And yet, the breadth of what he covers is anything but simple plumbing. It's an intricate map of a very curious mind.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the mission of this deep dive is to explore how a very simple, everyday act, specifically the act of planting seeds, can trigger this incredibly beautiful intersection of systematic learning, cultural linguistics, and profound nostalgia.
And we really cannot talk about this one specific post without first talking about the staggering scale of the archive it lives inside.
Yeah, we have to set the stage.
The context is absolutely crucial here. When you look at the sidebar of this blog, you aren't just looking at a casual diary where someone posts an update every few months when the mood strikes.
Like most blogs.
Right. You're looking at a meticulously maintained archive that dates all the way back to July 2011. It's a living, breathing record of a mind at work over 15 years.
And the output in recent years is what stood out to me the most. If you look at the yearly totals, they are just relentless.
The numbers are wild.
In 2023, Ang published exactly 730 posts.
Wow.
In 2024, he published 732 posts. In 2025, back to exactly 730 posts.
So that is exactly 2 posts a day, every single day.
Every single day, even today, on March 10th, 2026, he has already published 30 posts this month alone.
Which is keeping perfectly to that exact 2-a-day cadence.
That kind of consistency is rare. How does someone even maintain that kind of rhythm without burning out?
It really comes down to a specific philosophy of working and thinking. What's fascinating here is the underlying mindset connecting all of this. Ang's background is a software developer who spends his nights tinkering with free Libre and open source software.
Often abbreviated as FLAWDAS, right?
Yes, flaw fast. That background deeply informs how he engages with the entire world.
So I've heard the term open source before, usually in the context of things like Linux or web browsers, but what does FLAW actually mean in practice for someone's daily life?
So FLAWless is a philosophy that believes software code should be publicly accessible, transparent, and collaboratively built.
Like the opposite of a secretive, closed-off corporate product.
Exactly the opposite. People who are deep into the open source community rely on rigorous public documentation. If you change a piece of code, you write a commit log explaining exactly what you did, why you did it, and what version you're currently on.
And Ang is a big proponent of this.
Very much so. He explicitly supports organizations dedicated to this open ecosystem, like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Tor Project, and Wikipedia.
Okay, so he's completely steeped in this culture.
He is. And he has taken that highly structured open source programmer mindset and applied it to his physical life. Every hobby, every observation is documented like a software version update.
Which perfectly explains the titles of his posts. He uses a notes-on format that looks exactly like a version control system.
Right. It's very systematic.
Just looking at the posts from this month, March 2026, you see notes on Haskell programming, which is currently on part 78. I have to admit, I'm not a software engineer. What is Haskell and what is he actually doing in part 78?
Haskell is a functional programming language. It is notoriously complex and highly mathematical, favored by academics and industries that need absolute precision.
Like finance, maybe.
Exactly, like finance. In that specific post, he's writing about optimizing guards.
Guards, like security guards.
Sort of. In programming, a guard is basically a way to test if a condition is true before running a piece of code. It is kind of like a bouncer checking IDs at a club.
Oh, I see. If you don't meet the condition, you don't get in.
Precisely. If the condition isn't met, the code doesn't execute. So he's deep in the weeds of logical optimization.
But then right next to this intense mathematical programming, you have notes on fish keeping up to part 207.
A completely different world.
Completely. He's detailing things like switching to new feeds, simulating the monsoon season for his tanks, and adapting water parameters.
And he doesn't stop there. He applies the same lens to his own health. You'll see notes on dieting, specifically part 115, where he is actively researching eicosapentaenoic acid.
Which is what exactly? That is quite a mouthful.
It's an omega-3 fatty acid, usually abbreviated as EPA. It is commonly found in cold water fish.
Oh, okay. I know EPA.
Yeah, it's known for reducing inflammation. And he is breaking down the nutritional science with the exact same rigor he uses to break down software.
He also looks at hardware, right?
He does. He's analyzing Wi-Fi 7 protocols on MediaTek routers, which is literally the bleeding edge of wireless networking technology.
I noticed he also builds his own software tools. There's a mention of an Elixir library and an Erlang library. Are those related to the Haskell stuff?
They are different programming languages, but they share a certain pedigree. Elixir and Erlang are languages specifically designed to build massively scalable, highly concurrent systems.
Concurrent systems meaning what exactly?
Think of applications like WhatsApp, which has to handle millions of messages simultaneously without crashing.
Oh, that makes sense.
Aang built public libraries for these languages, which means he wrote reusable chunks of code and just gave them away for free so other developers could use them.
That is the open source ethos in action.
Exactly. You learn something, you build something, and you share your notes with the community.
With a mind that restless and technically focused, you'd expect his posts to stay strictly in the realm of servers and algorithms.
You really would.
But what really caught my eye in this archive was how he applies that exact same programmer's precision to something as simple and analog as dirt.
Which is a beautiful contrast.
It is. And that brings us to the main event for today's deep dive. We are looking closely at one specific post titled Notes on Gardening Part 829, A Nostalgic Mustard Green Journey, Part 829.
That version number alone tells you that gardening isn't just a passing weekend hobby for him.
No kidding.
It is a major, ongoing, deeply documented project.
In this post, Aang shares a gardening hack that I just found so clever. We often assume that to start a vegetable garden, you need to go to a specialized nursery, browse the racks of branded seed packets, and buy something specifically packaged for agriculture.
That is the standard route.
But Aang bypasses that entirely. He points out that you can find a wealth of viable seeds right in the spice and seasoning section of your everyday grocery store.
It is a highly resourceful observation, and it makes perfect sense when you think about the biology.
Because they're the same thing.
Exactly. Spices like mustard, coriander, and fennel are, after all, just the dormant seeds of those plants.
Right.
The agricultural supply chain packages them for planting, while the culinary supply chain packages them for eating. But structurally, they are the exact same thing.
Are there any caveats to that? Like, will any spice work?
Good question. As long as the spices haven't been roasted, crushed, or heavily irradiated.
Irradiated.
Yeah, some companies do that to prolong shelf life and kill bacteria. But as long as that hasn't happened, those little jars in the baking aisle are full of viable, living embryos waiting to germinate.
It feels like an open source workaround applied to the physical world.
That is exactly what it is.
He's bypassing the proprietary gardening supply chain and finding the raw code, the seeds, in the grocery aisle. So he goes to the spice section, and the specific plant he decides to grow is the mustard green.
Yes.
Scientifically, it's known as Brassica juncea. Locally, where he is based, it's known as choy sum, or sali.
True to his nature, once those seeds are planted, Aang doesn't just passively watch them grow.
Of course not.
He initiates a formal botanical investigation. While drafting this post, he researches the plant and discovers that there are 3 main varieties of this mustard: bitter, common, and wild.
And he notes that the seeds he planted from the spice jar have sprouted beautifully. He even includes a picture of them in the post.
They look very healthy.
But wait, how does a software guy handle the ambiguity of gardening? With code, you run the program and it either compiles or it crashes. You get immediate feedback.
It's binary, yes or no.
Right. But with a tiny green seedling, you can't just run the code. You don't know what you have until it grows.
That is a great distinction. He bridges that gap by adopting a strict scientific method.
Like a hypothesis.
Yes. He observes the current state, acknowledges the limitations of his current data, in this case, the fact that the seedlings are too small to definitively identify, and he forms a working hypothesis.
Which is?
Based on his initial observations, he hypothesizes that they are the common mustard variety. but he explicitly notes that he is waiting for more growth to verify.
He is comfortable with the null hypothesis while the data compiles, so to speak.
Exactly.
And he's using the formal naming conventions, too, which I find interesting. You mentioned Brassica juncea. Why do scientists and botanists insist on using those Latin names anyway?
That is the Latin binomial nomenclature. It's the formal two-part naming system scientists use to universally identify a species.
It was about standardization.
Yes. Brassica is the genus, which includes things like cabbage and broccoli, and juncea is the specific species. It removes all the confusion of regional slang.
So there's no misunderstanding.
Right, whether you are in a lab in Tokyo or a garden in London, Brassica juncea means the exact same genetic plant.
That makes total sense. He's standardizing his variables. But this is the exact moment where the post shifts from being a cool, objective botanical observation into something entirely different.
It takes a very personal turn.
It really does, because looking at those tiny categorized seedlings triggers a very deep memory for Ang. It transports him back to his younger days, remembering a time when his family used to plant both the bitter and the common varieties of this mustard.
The structured clinical observation suddenly gives way to a multilingual trip down memory lane.
Yeah, the plant stops being just a data point.
It stops being Brassica juncea and transforms into a linguistic and cultural artifact.
Let's explore the linguistic journey he shares, because this is where the deep dive gets really rich.
I agree.
He explains that in Standard Chinese, the bitter mustard variety is called Dakai.
And he adds that in Hokkien, it is called tuachai.
Hokkien being a specific dialect.
Yes, to give some context, Hokkien is a dialect originating from the Minnan region of southeastern China. Historically, many people from that region emigrated, so Hokkien is now widely spoken in various diaspora communities across Southeast Asia.
So what does tuachai mean in Hokkien?
The literal translation of tuachai is simply big vegetable.
Big vegetable. I love how unpretentious that is compared to the Latin binomial nomenclature.
It gets straight to the point.
It really does. But there is a very practical botanical reason for that folk name, isn't there?
There is. And this is where folk taxonomy, the way everyday people name things, often perfectly aligns with scientific observation.
Oh, how so?
Ang points out that the bitter mustard variety can grow into a truly massive plant. It develops stems that are significantly thicker and more robust than those of the regular common mustard.
Okay, so it literally is a big vegetable.
Linguistically, the Hokkien name tuachai is a direct description of the plant's morphology.
I think of morphology as something related to language, like how words change shape. How does that apply to a plant?
In biology, morphology just refers to the physical form and structure of an organism.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the shape of its leaves, the thickness of its stem, its overall size. So calling it the big vegetable is a highly accurate morphological description passed down through generations.
But it's not just about the size of the leaves or the stems, it's about the flavor and what you actually do with it in the kitchen.
That is the most important part for the people growing it.
Right. Ang notes that this specific variety, the bitter mustard, has an incredibly sharp, pungent, bitter taste. It's not the kind of soft, mild green you would just toss raw into a delicate side salad.
No, definitely not. Because of that aggressive flavor profile, it requires a specific culinary intervention to make it palatable.
And to preserve it, right.
Exactly, especially in a time before refrigeration. Ang explains that this bitter vegetable is traditionally salted or pickled.
So the fermentation changes the flavor.
Completely. The fermentation process mellows the harsh bitterness, enhances the umami, and creates a complex, sour, salty preserve.
Which brings us to another Hokkien term he shares in the post, kiam chai.
Yes.
That is the specific name for the salted, pickled version of the vegetable. And here's the detail that really brought the whole post to life for me. He writes that kiam chai is an absolutely essential topping for a bowl of plain porridge.
It's a brilliant culinary pairing.
It sounds delicious.
If you picture a traditional bowl of rice porridge, it's hot, it's soothing, it has a very bland, starchy base. It serves as a blank canvas.
You need something to punch that up.
That canvas desperately needs the sharp, salty, crunchy, slightly bitter punch of the pickled kiam chai to create a balanced meal. It is a staple comfort food for millions of people.
Think about the journey we just took. A tiny, unidentified seed gets plucked from a little glass jar in the baking aisle of a modern grocery store.
This is a spice jar.
It gets pushed into the dirt, it sprouts, and that single little green shoot acts like a time machine, leading directly to a vivid childhood memory of a comforting bowl of porridge topped with kiam chai.
It highlights something profound about human memory. Our senses, our food, and our language are intricately hardwired into our personal histories.
They're all connected.
And Ang manages to synthesize this beautifully at the end of his post.
He does, and this brings us to the real aha moment of the entire piece. Ang reflects on this chain of events, from the spice aisle to the Latin names to the Hokkien dialect.
Right.
And he writes, "It's funny how, after so many moons, I'm only now learning how to properly identify and name mustard in English, Chinese, and Hokkien all at once."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that single sentence is deeply revealing about the power of his methodology.
How so?
Well, here's a person who has dedicated his life to systems, to coding, to meticulously cataloging the chaotic world around him. He demands precision.
Right, the 730 posts a year.
Exactly. He tracks the exact spawning cycles of his fish, he analyzes the chemical makeup of his diet, and he builds open-source libraries to route millions of data points.
He maps everything.
He maps everything. And yet, it took this long and this specific, seemingly random act of planting a cheap seed from the grocery store for him to apply that same rigorous, systematic identification to his own cultural heritage.
It's as if he's bringing the structure of an open-source programmer to his own childhood.
That's a great way to put it.
He is taking the disparate pieces of his identity, the language of his ancestors, the food of his youth, the scientific curiosity of his adulthood, and finally, mapping them out.
Precisely. He is cross-referencing his own life.
Cross-referencing, I like that.
He is linking the English common name, the Latin botanical classification, the standard Chinese script, the Hokkien dialect pronunciation, and the culinary application all into one cohesive, documented commit log.
It is a moment of total synthesis. The external world of data and the internal world of memory finally align.
They finally lock into place.
So, for you listening right now, I want you to consider your own aha moments. Think about the things in your life that are so familiar, so ingrained in your daily routine or your earliest memories that you've never actually stopped to fully identify them.
We all have them.
How often do we eat a specific family recipe or use a specific slang phrase passed down from our grandparents without ever tracing it back to its roots?
More often than not.
Ang's journey shows us that looking closely at something incredibly simple, just a little green seedling pushing through the soil, can reveal a rich, complex tapestry of language, science, and personal history that has been hiding in plain sight your entire life.
It proves that the act of systematic documentation isn't just about recording cold, hard facts in a spreadsheet.
It's not just data entry.
No, when applied thoughtfully, it becomes a powerful tool for emotional and cultural discovery.
To sum it all up, this deep dive has shown us the unexpected power of approaching life with the dedication of a software plumber. By committing to recording his daily life, day in and day out, exactly 2 posts a day, Ang created the necessary conditions to turn a tiny, cheap seed from the spice aisle into a profound, multilingual journey of self-discovery.
He didn't just grow a mustard plant. He grew his understanding of himself.
And that leaves us with an intriguing proposition to consider.
If you were to approach your own life like an open source project, if you were to systematically give a version number to everything you observe and learn every single day, just like Ang's 829th note on gardening, what hidden connections between your childhood memories and your current habits would you suddenly be able to properly identify?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the archives of qianmeng.org. We hope this conversation inspires you to look a little closer at the simple things around you, and we warmly encourage you to keep exploring.